Hello again everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Joesephyr and welcome to another Should You Pull video for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. Now today's video is a banner that I'm particularly excited about, although I don't already have their LD and some already might, so it's still worth looking at this banner with regards to people who have it and don't necessarily have it, but if you don't have it already, it's an exciting one, and it's because Garland is coming back around with their LD board and the recurrence of their LD and their burst weapon, and this is a character that is going to be very, very strong for quite some time. And they're also joined by Seven, who is less strong than Garland. But if you'd like to find out more about Garland, why he's as strong as he is, Seven, why she might not be as strong as she is, and obviously the event that comes along with them both, then as always, stay tuned and keep on watching. As always, don't forget to check out all of my social media links in the description box below. If you haven't entered already, this is the last week that you have the opportunity to enter the giveaway for my Alexander painting. So definitely check out the link in the description box below if you want a chance at winning that. So that will be ending next Friday. Don't miss out on that, of course. With regards to Patreon, I always shout out one of my patrons every time I release one of my videos, and today that person is going to be Skeeth, who in their title card has the character I've probably used the burst for most often since I've had them, which is Cloud. So thank you very much for your support, and if you're interested in getting a title card made just for you to be put at the end of my videos, amongst a plethora of other benefits, then perhaps you'd like to consider becoming a patron yourself. Another thing to keep in mind is stay tuned because Future Pulls 4 is on its way. I'm already filming it, I've already made my plans, I've predicted what I want to do, whether I actually follow through with it or not is another matter, but that's beside the point. Future Pulls 4 is coming, so stay tuned and wait along for that. Don't forget to check out all the other content creators out there for Dissidia Opera Omnia, and of course all the resources around me that you can see just displayed on the screen here, as it's all in the description box below. So first things first, we're going to talk about Seven, and because Seven hasn't had a rework, I'm able to use Tonberry Troop's lovely infographic from back when she had her EX come out, so I can explain quickly what she does before we move on to Dissidia DB and look at their LD. But before we go into that, of course, we have the banners themselves, and the first banner, which contains Seven, will have all of Seven's gear, so EX, LD, etc. It will only have Garland's burst, so none of his other gear, but it will also feature Lena and Ida EX. So again, EXs, they are literally just consolation prizes at this point. Honestly, the number of times people say, oh, don't worry, you got lucky because you got someone's EX that you already had. I'm like, really? Anyways, so on the other banner, which will feature all of Garland's gear, is going to contain his LD, his burst, his EX, and everything else that comes along with it, and it's also going to feature Agrias and Freya's EXs. Now, obviously, if you already have Garland's LD, you're probably not going to want to pull on this banner, and if you're wanting a shot at Garland's burst banners, there's actually other banners that you can be pulling on. But let's take a look at Seven, and what it is that she actually does, and why many consider her to be a little bit underwhelming. It makes me quite sad that she's a bit underwhelming, because of all the Type 0 cast, she's probably the character that I enjoy the most because of the dagger tail whip and things like that. I love like the animations for her attacks and things like all like the sadistic spikes from her EX, all that cool stuff. I actually really like Seven, so like if it depends on how Garland is to me, but we'll get to that. Anyways, with regards to her kit, her base kit is basically there to inflict a particular debuff on a single target, and she can only inflict this debuff on a single target because if she targets somebody else with it, it gets removed from the first one. You have to envision that she's kind of latching onto something with her whip, inflicting this snake bite debuff, which means that all of her other attacks towards that attack are stronger, and it also inflicts a pretty hefty framed defense down debuff as well, so it does help your party in that regard in terms of damage dealing. Now, the trouble with her base kit is that it doesn't hit particularly hard. Snakebite and Lash is a 4-hit Brave HP attack. That's it. It grants the Snakebite debuff, which also stacks, so it does the 50% defense down at 3 stacks, and it does weakness damage if it's hitting a Snakebite target. Elemental Lash, which is her other ability, is a 3-hit Brave HP attack that hits twice if it's attacking the person that has Snakebite on them, and it also inflicts a speed down debuff. Now, in this day and age, even if it is going off twice, 3-hit Brave HP, not really cutting the mustard at this point in time. Not only that, but it has 3 elements attached to it: fire, ice, and lightning. with the number of enemies now, certainly in Lufenia missions, that resist or absorb one of those elements, there's going to be a lot of times where you literally just can't use this, and it's really quite sad. But Sadistic Spikes is a saving grace for her. Sadistic Spikes is actually very good. It's a 4-hit Brave HP attack that a 6-hit Brave HP attack that hits twice, so that's significantly better. It's got a decent recast rate on it. It does have splash damage on it as well, and it makes it so that you get Snakebite when you come in. It also recovers a use of Snakebite and Lash, which means that you should never not have Snakebite on an enemy at all times when you're using 7. And it also makes it so that she's got her generic Max Brave buff up that she gets from using Snakebite and Lash on top of that. But by and large, it's kind of it. That's as far as her base kit has gone, and she hasn't had a rework. But her LD, so we're going to move over to Dissidia DB now, which is Diving Strike, which again, I really, really like the animation for this, gives her kind of switches her role up a little bit into that kind of Quistisy support / damage dealer type deal. Kind of like, really, maybe it's a whip thing, I don't know. But basically, it does a multi-brave HP attack that hits with multiple HP dumps. It does more bravery hits when you put the LD boards into it. It also has splash damage, and it gives her a buff that makes it so that the party's bravery HP attack damage is increased by 20%, and we all know that that's a fairly big deal. Also raises party attack, and also raises party brave overflow. And then after she's used this, she gets a different variant on her HP attack, which is a 2-hit Brave HP attack that adds onto the Snakebite, so you don't have to use Snakebite and Lash to do it. It also does the weakness damage to anything that's got Snakebite, which it will because the LD already put it on there as well. And it gives you a buff called Capture Whip. So basically, this is like a trap, kind of Trey-ish, so again, Type 0 type deal, which does Brave HP attack based on 70% of her attack stat. So if you are going to use 7, make sure her attack stat is as big as it can possibly be so that this attack does some damage. It doesn't do a lot, I will say that now. It doesn't do a huge amount of damage. Don't expect it to be carrying you for damage. It's just a nice extra. And it can't break the enemy either, but it triggers for the following 5 turns after you've put the Capture Whip down. And it's AoE damage. And then, you know, when you put the tokens into it, it makes it so that Generous Heart lasts longer, and you get 4 uses out of it. So that's 20 turns worth of Capture Whip and 32 turns worth of Generous Heart. So it's fine. And the Capture Whip also makes it so that their speed and attack goes down even further, their speed goes down even further, and their attack goes down, and their party bravery damage is increased by 20% to add on to the Generous Heart that you already have. So it is quite a lot of bravery damage increase. The problem with 7 isn't her LD, it's actually very good, it's everything else. It's the fact that her bravery hit counts are very low for this point in time. Yes, she's getting a follow-up on stuff, but it's not a particularly strong one. She's there as a buffer. They've kind of switched her role so that she's got these like party auras, but her LD is where all of her party auras are. She doesn't get them from anywhere else. And because Elemental Lash, which is her almost primary method of dealing damage, is pretty weak and can be absorbed by a very large variety of enemies. So I wouldn't go too ham on 7 personally, but if you did really like her, you can definitely make use of her. To go over the rest of the little bits and pieces of 7 before we move on to Garland, her calls are a bit weird. Diving Strike is fine, like it inflicts Snakebite for 4 turns, but only 2 levels of it, so not the full 50% defense down, sadly. And you get some party brave damage increase from it, which is kind of nice. It's not bad. Like 20% from the call effect is pretty good. But then the second call, Elemental Lash, only really works if you've already used Diving Strike, because while it does the speed down, it does the second Elemental Lash if they're afflicted with Snakebite. The only way to get Snakebite on the enemy is for you to use the LD call first. So while it's not bad, I wouldn't go chasing 7 exclusively for her call abilities. She has the Tactics Keystone, which I do normally quite like, and it does compound. I always like it on characters that lower defense and attack specifically, because it compounds those. And if you're going to use 7 a lot, then you might want to pick this up as well, because 20% defense down on top of the 50% from the Snakebite debuff, it's quite nice. And then finally, when it comes to artifacts, you want her attack as high as it will physically go, because you want those hits to count, and you want the capture whip like to go off as best it can. Luckily, she has a C50 buff that boosts all of her stats as long as the enemy is afflicted with snakebite, which, let's face it, if you're using 7, they should be. So now let's talk about Garland. Oh boy, with Garland is like the next character on the list alongside Squall, where the LD board makes all the difference to him. Now, Garland doesn't have a rework on his base kit, and his base kit is all about delay if you have the LD already. Well, even if you don't have the LD, basically you put on Soul of Conflict, which makes it so that anytime you deal damage to an enemy, you delay them by a turn. You also have these kind of leveling up abilities like Soul of Chaos, Chains of Time, and even his burst effect does this as well, where they get stronger and stronger and stronger after he attacks. Now, Chains of Time originally lowered defense by up to 30%, speed by up to 50%, which is a big speed drop, by the way, and he gets free skill uses off of his LD, which is all well and good. It does a decent amount of damage, it gives him Solar Conflict so that he's able to get the delay going for as much as possible, and it was nice. Like, Garland was never bad. Like, he's one of the few characters that can delay during a launch, which is a big deal. So he pairs up really well with launch characters as well, because obviously as long as he has that buff on, he can then do a lot of damage with it. Now, his LD boards. I want to talk about his LD boards a little bit. So, Binding Chaos now itself is a double HP dump, which is fantastic. His Chains of Time debuff or buff or special effect lasts longer, and it gets some extra effects. So it increases the amount of bravery damage dealt by up to 50%, which he's going to have level 5 Chains of Time up the majority of the time. It increases any HP damage he deals by 30%. It increases his Brave Overflow limit by 40%. It also increases his buff duration by 1, which means that his Soul of Chaos and his other the delaying buff lasts longer. And while Chain of Time is active, he gets two hit Brave HP attacks after every attack he does. Every attack. This is scary, even without looking at his burst. And his burst is also terrifying. The amount of damage you can churn out with Garland, particularly on his EX, because his EX is actually very powerful already. It is a 4 HP dumping attack where he gains bravery based on the amount of damage he dealt in the last hit to then do the next one. So it like builds up and up and up and up. So basically, now that you've got this 50% brave increase, 30% HP increase, on top of any party buffs you might already have, and the double HP attack afterwards, you're looking at anywhere between 300,000 and 500,000 damage just on the EX. And that's terrifying. It also means that any other attacks he does as well, so his basic skills, one of them is AoE, which you're going to want because it's going to make it so that you have AoE delay in your kit. And he has a single target attack that's also going to do multiple HP dumps now, especially with now he's got this follow-up on everything he's got. And that's before we've even looked at his burst. His burst is crazy good, like crazy good, for very much the same reason as Emperor for a start. Now, Emperor, we all loved Emperor. I'm still sad that I don't have it. But we all love Emperor because during his burst phase, he has an attack that delays the enemy by 1 every turn if you want it to by using his HP+. Garland's got that too, because it's attached to a buff he's got. And it means he gets more skill uses out of everything. His damage phase is going to be pretty intense because he's getting his EX during that time, his LD during that time, which is now a double HP dump. He's getting the extra Brave HP attack follow-ups after every single turn in his burst. And that's before looking at the burst effect, which is also really good. It's really strong. So basically it's a generic AoE HP attack with split damage, 15 hits, all well and good. But the burst effect itself is 6 turns. Now, Garland's not the fastest character in the world, which is normally a bad thing, but here, I think it's actually pretty useful. It increases bravery damage for the party by between 30 and 50%. HP damage dealt by between 10 and 30%. Max Bravery damage limit by 20 to 40%. Brave Overflow limit by 20 to 40%. That's a lot. That is a lot. And the level basically every time you take a turn, that level goes up. But it gets reset when the enemy takes a turn. So the idea with Garland is you do not let them move. Basically, like, if he is going to make it so that you just have to control yourself up until the point, because obviously I've said this before, a lot of enemies in Lufenias have, like, times where they need to take turns to do something. If they don't, though, you take Garland and they're probably not moving. Like, they're probably not going to get a turn. Because as long as you control yourself until, like, the midsection point, where normally they've had all their big buffs, they've done everything that they're going to do, and now it's like, I need to churn out damage. Snap your fingers, Garland Burst, delay them by 6 turns, and delay them even further because Garland's going to get more turns with that. Pair him up with another delay character, Aranea, or Lightning, or anything if you want to. That enemy's not getting a turn. It's just not going to happen. And the other thing that's nice with Garland as well is that he is also one of the earlier adopters of Burst Plus, which is also very powerful. So if you're going in for Garland now, and you want his burst, I want his burst and I will burst token his burst based on the fact that not only is he useful now, and I mean very useful now, because you can always take him as a control piece and not necessarily go the full delay, like I will delay until the cows come home by using his burst. He's just very good at controlling the field. He's got speed down 50% in his aura. He's got a lot of things going for him. But then not only that, he's then going to come back with his Burst Plus, saving you from having to pull for it then, and you having a really strong Burst God Plus character from the get-go. There are a few characters like this, and I will discuss this further when it comes to my future pulls video, but trust me when I say, Garland is a very worthwhile investment. There are a ton of Lufenia missions that he is useful on, even after his synergy is ended. Like, he is a character that you can use for months. When it comes to Garland's cool abilities, chances are, if you're not taking Garland in your main party, you're probably not going to be taking his cool abilities either. Because you don't get the Soul of Conflict, I remember the name now, the Soul of Conflict that allows you to do the delay all the time or anything like that. You don't get, like, quite as much out of him as you would if he was in your main party. The cool effect is alright, 30% at max brave and attack up after you've done an attack, but then you're only going to get the 30% of each of them at the end of the cool duration, or the latter half of the cool duration, which is like, yeah, alright. And then Bind of Chaos, it does the similar sort of thing to what Chains of Time does, just without all of the bells and whistles on it. It lowers enemies' defense and speed, which, again, it's nice, but I wouldn't go out of my way to use it. I'd rather just have Garland in my main party if I was going to use him at all. He has Attack Keystone. Just get it. Just do it. And then when it comes to his artifacts, attack. All the attack. Everything attack when it comes to Garland. He is a damage dealer through and through that delays, and delays a lot, but he is still primarily a damage dealer, and he hits like an absolute bus. So you want to get as much attack as you physically can on him. So now let's take a look at the event that's coming along with these two, and it's going to be the Kaiser Behemoth that's also accompanied by Warrior of Light mannequins. Now, I'm probably not going to spend too long talking about this particular mission because realistically, most people, if not everyone, is going to be taking a delay team with them because it's a boss. Well, I'd say it's a single target boss. It's not. It's kind of AoE-ish, but the Lufenia Orb asks for delay and is plus 15 on the turn count. The only real stipulation is you cannot take magic damage with you. If you take magic damage with you while the boss is on 4 legs, it will kill you instantly. After you get to the halfway point, he stands up on 2 legs. If you remember DE7, it was the same behemoth from that. He stands up on 2 legs and then he won't do that anymore. So you can take magic damage dealers if you really want to, and then swap them out for a friend unit to try and boss him down until he's half health, and then you can use them again. But honestly, I wouldn't even bother. As long as you've got delay somewhere. Like I don't normally recommend synergy characters for these events because I try to make sure that everyone like has the capabilities to do so without pulling. But I would assume that the 99% of people are going to use Garland here because he has AoE damage, which helps you against both Warrior of Light and the Kaiser Behemoth. Aranea, also fantastic here. Lightning, also fantastic here. All of those characters are going to do well for you. Now, the Warrior of Light mannequin can actually be a bit of a pain if you want to do this while letting them take turns, because his first attack is going to lock your entire party. Now, that means that you have to either use AoE damage here in order to damage the boss and the mannequin at the same time, or kill the mannequin really, really quickly so that he's not interrupting you dealing damage to the boss. Ironically, all of Seven's damage is pretty much single target bravery damage, except for the capture whip. So she's actually really not very helpful even in the mission she's designed for, which is kind of sad, honestly. But if you have Garland, just take Garland and either Aranea or Lightning and then some sort of Aura bot, and then you will be fine. Like, 99% of people are going to use delay here, so I'm not going to sit here and try and explain to you all the other ways in which you can do it, because I think most people are just going to do that, myself included. So now we come to the big question, of course, should you be pulling on Garland or Seven's banner? Honestly, the answer to this depends entirely on whether you already have Garland's LD or not. If you don't, you will want Garland. You just will. He's just extraordinarily powerful. He does so much damage now with those follow-ups, with all those enhancements to his LD. The burst phase is disgusting with him. His EX now hits for insane amounts of damage. He's got delay for days, speed down, defense down, so he even helps the party out without meaning to. There's not a lot to dislike about Garland at this point in time, so if you don't have his LD, you definitely want to at least try and grab that, in my opinion. It lasts for months. I've done my planning for teams that I'm going to use for the next, well, to help me with future pulls, basically, and Garland's name pops up a lot in the events to come. And not only that, but because we know when his burst plus is coming, getting him now, or getting his burst at least at some point during his burst banners, means that's, like, as soon as that comes out, you've got a really strong character straight out of the box that you don't have to pull for. So pull now, save later, and then you'd be able to save resources for other characters back down the line. If you do already have Garland's LD, I would suggest not pulling here. I would wait, and because there are significantly better places to attempt to get his burst than here. Seven's fine, she's alright. Like, I hate it because I like her, but her damage is really lackluster. She doesn't, like, her bravery shaving capabilities are practically nothing comparatively to a lot of other characters. She does have some things going for her, like the party auras. The fact that she does bravery damage up for the party and HP damage up is great. We've seen that in the past. The problem is that there are so many other banners here that a lot of people are going to be wanting to pull for, namely Yang, or Faris, or even Ignis. All of those characters are likely going to take precedent over Seven. And if you already have Serra, there's very little reason for you to be going for Seven at this point. So because Serra has a more widespread utilization, the fact that Seven gets locked out by Snakebite being only able to be applied on one enemy at a time, the fact that her Elemental Lash is triple elemental, which doesn't help her. It's not a good thing that it's a triple elemental attack, and even when it does work, you're looking at a couple of brave HP pluses, which Garland gets on his follow-ups on everything he does to give you a point of comparison. I think the point of Seven is that she's meant to be used in boss fights where you have a singular boss that summon other enemies, like the one that's brought here, but even in her own Lufenia, she's just not that fantastic. You know, there's much better places for you to be pulling than Seven. If you really like her, you'll absolutely get use out of her. She isn't bad. There's just more characters that are pressing at this point than her. And if you haven't got Garland LD, you definitely ain't pulling for Seven at this point. And then finally, it's time for Would You Pull, the section of the video where you, the viewer, get your chance to let your voice be heard and let everyone know whether you would or wouldn't pull on any given banner or set of banners and why. Now, the numbers here are going to look a little bit skewed because obviously with Garland's LD having come out once before, a lot of people, myself included, tried to get that in with the burst in mind, knowing that it was coming and knowing how strong it was going to be and how strong his LD boards were going to be. I sadly failed to get his LD the first time around, and I needed the resources to pick up other things. So I will be going in here with gems, and I will be burst tokening Garland by the end of these banners. And this isn't a case of Emperor. I'll think about it. I'll maybe think about it. I will be burst tokening Garland one way or another. There's no two ways about it. He lasts too damn long. But to go into, so the numbers here, 35% of people said that they were going to use gems here, 16% of people said they were going to use 100 or more tickets here, 16% of people said they were going to use less than 100 tickets here, and 32% of people said they were going to skip the banner entirely. And I am fairly certain that the people who are saying no here, 99 if not 100% of those people will already have Garland's LD. Although, don't quote me on that, I could be wrong. To go into some of the comments though, a JRPG fan says, skipping these banners as I already have Garland's LD and 7 doesn't interest me. I'll be gunning for Garland's burst on Desh's Lost Chapter, which gives Yang LD, and Faris's banner. However, with delay coming from Garland simply by touching an enemy, his LD is not to be missed, and newer players will find Garland very helpful for some of the more difficult content while building their roster. If I didn't already have the LD, I'd definitely throw some tickets at this banner to pick it up now. I mean, I think he's gems. I think Garland, if you don't have the LD, I think he is an all-in character, like 100%. He lasts for months now. Has a slight break where you'll be using characters like Zidane, Ishtola Burst Plus, Tidus, Yuna, characters like that. And then he comes back again with a Burst Plus that you don't have to pull for if you already have it now, meaning that he lasts even longer. Like, I don't think there are many characters that last quite as long as he does in terms of being useful. But yeah, I mean, if you've got an abundance of tickets, then yeah, go for the LD and leave the burst until a later banner. That's also a perfectly legitimate thing to do, but I don't want to take chances with Garland. Red Cloud says, Garland burst is a must pity, but I'm waiting for Faris LD to go hard for him. I already have his LD, and all the other prior banners are getting tickets. If I get lucky, I get lucky. If I don't have it by Faris's banner, that's when I'll pity with gems. I mean, I kind of want to do the same thing, because I really want Faris LD, but like I said, I am not willing to take chances with Garland, and if I were to get his burst while pulling for his LD, I'd be over the moon. I have not pulled a burst in so long that I think I'm due one. And I'd really, honestly, the amount I'm pulling on this batch of banners, I'd like to hope that I don't have to use burst tokens here, but I will if I have to. Multiracial Lion says, I'll be using this tickets on this banner, specifically in the hopes of getting 7. Her kit becomes much more utility oriented, and her new LD shenanigans seem like a lot of fun and ought to make a decent LD call. Party Brave and HP damage up is not insignificant, and the LD being used to set up a burst phase is almost bullying. This is true, actually. I'll come back to this in a second. I will not be pulling for Garland, as I had this burst in mind when I pulled for his LD during his Lost Chapter. If I can't get it here, that's okay. I've got tokens burning a hole in my pocket. Using 7's LD or the Capture Whip before using a burst is actually significant, because you can use it because it won't tick down during that burst phase, which means you're getting an extra 10 to 20,000 damage on every attack, which is significant. It does add up. I think that because she has the Party Brave HP up as well, if you don't have Sarah, I'd say 7 was more worth your while, but if you have Sarah, they're so... she's literally more of a side grade than anything to a lot of characters. So I think that that's why I've kind of recommended skipping her for the most part. And then finally, Wuton says, hopefully I'll get super lucky on the free pulls, or if not, I will token his burst as I already have the LD and I want to save resources for next month. Plus, who knows what banners are going to be running alongside Abyss. Please, game, I want to save resources. Yes, that is also true. I have posted this video before the May Faire Abyss banners. We don't know what's on those. So, do take some of this with a pinch of salt as well, because we don't know what's going to be on those banners. I can't imagine they're going to do something super groundbreaking again this soon after Sarah. I'd be shocked if they did, but who knows, it could happen. The only suggestion I will make is that because we have a free pull on on all of these banners that are coming up in the latter half of the month, be careful tokening Garland too early, because the last thing you want to do is spend 50 burst tokens or pity his burst now and then get it in the free pull for Yang or for Faris, etc. So just be careful on that front, but he's just amazing. He really is. So that's going to be all from today's video. Do stay tuned, as I've got loads of videos coming up in the near future, including future pulls for. Let me know in the comments below whether you're planning on pulling for Garland or 7. and how many resources you're going to be using on Garland. And I managed to get through this amount of the video without gushing about the fact that I love Garland as a character because A, he's a villain, and B, he's from FF1. So that's a big deal for me. I like a lot of characters in this game. That's why I end up having to pick and choose between my favourites because there's a lot of them. But yeah, that's going to be it from me. So don't forget to like the video, click that bell for notifications on any future videos I might be making, and of course subscribe to the channel. And that's going to be it from me. So thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you soon. Take care.